A year later, on a late November morning in 1949, Kate sat waiting in the Riley parlor for her friend Jan Larson to come by with his father's Oldsmobile to take her to the station. She had tucked her hands under her legs, and she was so excited that she could almost lift herself bodily from the Chesterfield. At first, Fiona Riley refused to talk about it, and then, when that seemed to have no force, she refused to listen, and finally, all words expelled from the house, she stared at her daughter, an expression of wild terror in her eyes, and simply wailed. By the time the car rolled to a stop beside the iron fence, Fiona had fallen into a deep, calculating silence. Having positioned herself beside the door with her hat and gloves already on, she would either prevent her daughter from leaving or make sure they would not try to go without her. It wasn't clear. "Dear Katie," she managed finally. Her quivering lip exposed the crooked line of her lipstick, which she had tried to apply without quitting her post, and it was this, more than anything, this pathetic emblem of neediness, that had broken a little of Kate's heart. Her mother had been standing there for over an hour. "Dear Katie," she repeated. Jan ducked through the front door, hoisted Kate's 2 suitcases, and made his escape down the walk, clearly not wanting to get between 2 females at parting time. He was wearing his coat and tie for the occasion. The tie brought tears to Kate's eyes, which she quickly swiped away. It would not do for her mother to witness and then to misinterpret them. Kate could see Jan leaning against the Olds, running his fingers through his thick blonde hair, an act she herself had so often enjoyed that, watching him, she could feel the hair parting around her own fingers. Every now and then he gave his head a sad shake and looked down at the frozen ground, poking at it with the toe of his boot. He did not want Kate Riley to leave. It was a bleak day, a day that offered nothing by way of compensation. A northwest wind moaned along the eaves. 2 inches of old snow held wherever it had gotten soft enough during the day and then hard enough at night to resist the daily blow. The sky was mottled, the blue wan, the clouds coalescing for a vague autumn storm. Outside town, the stubble fields had a picked-over, skeletal look about them, like the remains of an enormous dead animal laid flat. She couldn't wait to leave. Miriam Pettigrew had already gone on to Vancouver, and they planned to hook up. Oh, the thought of it all practically made her insides jump up and go without her. "But how are you going to get along, dear Katie?" It was so seldom her mother called her Katie that instinctively Kate returned the favor. "Mummy, I was a fine mother, I was, dearie, when you were a wee tot." There was a pensive and persuasive lilt in her voice, as if she actually entertained hopes of stopping this departure. "Mum, it's all been arranged. John has let a room for me at a boarding house. The woman who runs it is his friend's sister-in-law. I've tried to tell you about it for weeks." I was not only a fine mother, but a pal to all. Kate inspected her fingernails, discovered a bit of dirt, and dug it out with her thumbnail. "You're a good nurse, I know," she said with cold sincerity. "Nurse, yes, well, there are the bills to be paying, Kate. When Dad died, there was still the keeping up. If you go off, you'll have bills of your own." Then she added the single word nurse, as if to bring herself back on topic. "Yes, always plenty of trouble about. Sickness don't lay up. It was a smart profession for a woman with no one." A film of dreamy rumination spread over Fiona's expression. "I have a little of the summer complaint," she said, and pressed the flat of her hand against her abdomen. "Before that was the cold, a humdinger. Even the doctor said so. I remember it began when the farmers were finishing up the last of the combining and went on right through to middle October. That's how I remember it starting. The farmers had swathed and were just finishing up the combining, and I wasn't feeling quite the fiddlin'." Fiona's mind seemed to slide away with her voice, and into the silence the ticking parlor clock surfaced with a portentous insistence. Kate gazed out the window at Jan. He was using his handkerchief to wipe something from the windshield. "So that I can see clearly this place for the last time," Kate thought. When Fiona came around, she seemed surprised to find herself standing where she was and reached up to stroke the door jamb as if to get to know it better. Kate, she said with a pleading voice, and her eyebrows wobbled hopefully. I'm sure to find work, Mom. I've a letter from the Success College. They're going to teach me to type and keep books, and that will get me a job, an office job. There's nothing left for me to learn here. Even Mr. Bowles says there's no good in my staying on through my last school term. You sure was a clever little cricket. Dad was always noticing how quick-like you took to things. And there's no work in Netherfield, Mom, not even for fellows. He worshipped you. He fairly glowed when he looked at you, and you had to be the famous one. How do you know when you've had enough? She had asked Jan a month earlier. I've simply got to go away, Mother. Out there in the world, Kate, you'll have no chance to monkey-ump, and no mother to be taking care of you if you do, neither. When you have to ask, she told him, that's when. You could end up on the wrong path, your chum Miriam, always blowing about the great time she is having. Is that what's got into you? But her people are here. Her people are here in Netherfield. Again Kate glanced out the window. Jan hunched his back to the gathering wind. If she missed the train, she'd have to wait 2 days for the next one. I promised to visit, she said wearily. No word from my boys. They never write. Mother, they write. And now Kate, too, she murmured with a kind of sad, ethereal wonder, as if Kate were already part of the past and the people in it who never wrote. I will visit. Fiona seemed to brighten suddenly. Christmas is coming, lickety-split. Stay until Christmas. You always liked Christmas. This is no time to travel with all the crackpots racing around. What are you talking about? Then she seemed to fall upon another course of appeal. Is it that you're lonely, Kate? You've got young Larson out there waiting on you like a little dog. He's a dandy little dog, to be sure. What her mother said offended her, but there was a part of her that liked the analogy, that liked the idea of Jan and his dog-like devotion. It was something to be proud of, an accomplishment, though she couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed for Jan. But I've no one, dear Kate, since Dad passed. It's one thing for Miriam Pettigrew to run off with all her finery and her people. They have money, sure, and Mrs. Pettigrew has her hubby to keep her through the winter. It's another kettle of fish. But I've no one, Kate. Since Dad passed on, I've had no one. A person can just stand so much, Mother, and I think I've tried every way I know of making you feel loved, and you just never wanted it. Dear Kate, 'tisn't the same. By now Fiona's tone had taken on an educational crispness, as if she had forgotten momentarily what they were really talking about. She worked her lower lip against the edge of her dentures with pensive superiority, removed a piece of lint from her dress, and matter-of-factly told Kate, and after all, it was owed me, you'd agree. What? Dad fairly worshipped you. My share, why, you took it, Kate, dear, long before he passed. It was owed me. Dipping her chin toward her right shoulder, she shot Kate a steady, incontrovertible look, as if to say that she regretted having to mention this. It was awkward bringing up such matters, but that if Kate refused to acknowledge the obvious, well, reluctantly, she'd have to. A dull heaviness infected Kate's movements, and yet, in spite of it, or perhaps because of it, because it was pulling on her the way gravity tugs everything down toward a final core, she gathered up her satchel, her coat, her scarf. She pressed out the wrinkles her body had made in the fabric of the Chesterfield, as her mother always insisted she do. She gave the parlor a quick, desperate last review, and then she walked past her mother and out the door.